With terror groups taking to social media like never before, lawmakers are now working on legislation that would require social media outlets like Facebook or Twitter to report suspected terror messages. Sounds like a good idea, but is it legal? All rise. Judge Andrew Napolitano is back with us. I know we always get into the First Amendment, right, that little funny thing that starts off all these different rules, but could they say, could we do something to help identify these guys?
Okay. The question that you asked in the intro, is it legal? The answer is if Congress enacts it and the president signs it into law, it will be legal. The real question is it constitutional? I'm chuckling because who often sits and usually sits in this chair, and they don't have a written constitution, so he doesn't know the Constitution. Varney doesn't know the Constitution from a hole in the wall. But anyway, I'll hear it because he's in somewhere. But
to Barney's point, he would tell you he's looking out for the safety of all Americans.
And that's a very legitimate argument that, in fairness to Stewart, appeals to most Americans. Here's the law. The First Amendment not only prohibits the government from interfering with speech, there's a flip side to that. It prohibits the government from compelling speech, which is why if you see a crime committed on a street corner, you see a guy running out of a bank with a gun in his hand and a sack of cash over, I guess they don't rob banks that way, but if that happened, you do not have the obligation to report that to the police. So if you are running Facebook and you see some kind of a threat, do you have that obligation? If you do, that would violate traditional First Amendment principles that the government can't force speech. That's the constitutional argument. Right. If I may, the political argument. In East Germany, the old East Germany, where it was a crime not to report a crime, the most frequently prosecuted crime was failure to report.
Right.
That resulted in what? Tremendous false reports. And that ginned up the security state. A was reporting on B, and B was reporting on C, and C was reporting on A.
So even though we're not compelled necessarily to report a crime, is it an option if we would like to?
Absolutely.
So if Facebook says we want to be good corporate citizens, hey, how about we add some algorithms? Because,
Well, if Facebook does that, they have to tell you before you sign up.
They have to let the customer know.
They have to let the customer know. The customer may want to go somewhere else if there is a competitor with Facebook.
So they'll say, disclaimer, if you're a terrorist, we may be trying to hunt you down a little bit, help the government hunt you down.
Can they do that and say that? Absolutely, because that changes the relationship between Facebook and the customer.
But Judge, here's the problem. Dennis Hastert asked him about the $10,000 cash rule at the bank. You bring $10,000 into the bank this afternoon, which I know you will from your pocket change, and you deposit that, the bank has to write a little note to the government and tell them that Judge Napolitano just dropped in $10,000 in cash.
You're exactly right, and that's a great point. And the answer to that is the government treats banks differently because the government's been regulating banks since 1791. And we just have a tradition of regulating federally chartered banks. That is forced speech. And it is contrary to the Supreme Court's jurisprudence on it, but it's a carved-out exception because the government has extraordinary powers. It shouldn't, in my view, but it does, to regulate the banking system.
All right.
So where is this going to go?
Great question. I thought you had him. I thought you had him.
I know.
The whole thing is interesting because you know who's against this? The guy who's got to sign it into law. The president is against this. Why a Senate committee is even going to send it to him, I don't know.
There's reports.
Unless this is some political thing, where the Republicans want to sound tougher than the Democrat.
There are reports that ISIS is putting out 100,000 messages a day, helping to radicalize Westerners around the world. I think we could stop them if we just, use high-frequency trading technology, algorithms, or we could at least identify them.
I don't want to ruin your 4th of July weekend, but emails encouraging people to join ISIS, protected speech.
I hear you.
Protected speech, clearly protected under the First Amendment. Well, burning a flag.
My inner Stewart came out. I'm sorry. Maybe it's a seat. Judge, have a great weekend.
All the best.
All right.